Where this becomes interesting is that he doesn't say that he got to the Rettendon Turnpike, the roundabout, and then took the third exit, which is down towards Rettendon. He says he took the fourth exit. Now this is a man who's never been to this area before, doesn't know it at all.
And in this video on the Essex Boys case, the first in a series looking at the Billy Jasper theory and concluding with the unreleased material, the 12 pages of notes that Billy Jasper made in his cell, the audio from the police interviews and the transcripts, etc. But in this video, we look at the missing hours. Because if the Billy Jasper theory is true, then the three were of course alive until after midnight. The three being of course Patrick Tate, Tony Tucker and Craig Rolfe, that were all found murdered in a Range Rover in Rettendon, Essex in December 1995. Billy Jasper says he dropped off the killer of the three in the Range Rover just after midnight. But if the three were alive till after midnight, the big question is, where were they? Or any contact from the three to any of their girlfriends or partners at the time. Having seen and heard some of the unreleased Jasper material, I truly believe the doubt in the Jasper theory will always boil down to the missing hours. But that of course doesn't mean the three in the Range Rover were dead. Most people that believe the three in the Range Rover were killed around 7 o'clock, even if they believe in Darren Nichols' version of events or not, it always come back to the no phone calls from any of the three. But we will never know if Patrick Tate made or received calls after 1844, because Essex police manipulated the call data. The version that was used in court only goes up to 1844. The full version, showing calls and data after 14.4, was never disclosed, and now Essex police refuse to disclose it. The big question there would be why. And Tucker's mobile phone records would only show calls made from his mobile phone and not received and answered. He may have received other calls not shown on the disclosed call data. And this part is interesting, but definitely not confirmed in any way at all. And that there's apparently a third mobile phone that was never disclosed. Now, whether that was a mobile phone belonging to Pat Tate and maybe a third mobile phone because apparently Lizzie Fletcher had one of his mobiles, or whether that was actually Craig Rolfe's mobile phone, Craig was found without a mobile, or whether that was Tony Tucker's, but this is not confirmed. And I think if we are to believe that the three in the Range Rover, well, Pat, Tony and Craig were sourcing coke that evening, it's possible that they were sourcing it out of town. And this could be the answer to some of the missing hours that evening, if they in fact went up to London or down to Southend to collect this 4k of coke, which was the apparent reason for the meet that night with Mr. D. Now also a lot of people, when it comes to the three being killed, base it on the restaurant booking, because Tony Tucker, according to Gary Jackets, always cancelled his restaurant bookings that they'd made in the past. But of course, if their focus was getting this coke, their focus was this money that this coke was going to produce at the end of this deal, it could just mean that Tony Tucker thought, well, this meal booking's not that important, and I can just make it another one tomorrow. But again, people do focus on the restaurant booking not being cancelled. And then there's the possible sightings in the Fortune of War and the Orsic Cock. The landlady said around 8 p.m. She's unfortunately passed away now. And then of course the earlier sighting by Anton Johnson of the Orsic Cock of the three with a fourth man, which makes you wonder who that possibly could have been. And of course, if this actual sighting was around 8 p.m, then you've got the possible sighting of Craig Rolfe. You've got the possible sighting of Craig Rolfe in the Carpenter's Arms. Stuart Armstrong, who made the statement, was pressurised by the QC at the trial that he may have got the days wrong, and it was actually going to be the Tuesday instead of the Wednesday. But if that was Craig Rolfe, again, that would have been after 7, proving that Darren Nichols is of course telling lies, which you've only just got to look into his version of events to see that, well, let's not go there with Darren Nichols. The sighting, of course, at the Turnpike, which was after 11 o'clock, which was made by 3 people. Only 2 made statements. There is, of course, a bit of confusion at who the third person was. Some people believe it was meant to be the wife, who was actually at home of one of the witnesses, but there was a third person in the vehicle that saw the Range Rover and this altercation on the turnpike after 11, but the third person never made a statement. Those statements actually come in 11 years after the event, so there is a sort of question on whether that actually was the three in the Pat, Tony and Craig, but there's more to come on the turnpike sighting over the next couple of months. And then there was Stephen Rogers, who heard shots, made a statement that he heard shots, a fusillade of shots. That was around about 12:30. So that possibly could have been Mr. D. Billy Jasper describes the time being slightly later, but his timings slightly could be off. So it could have been, this is Mr. D. Stephen Rogers heard murdering Pat, Tony and Craig. And then you've got the story of Billy Jasper, which what's out in the public domain isn't as detailed as the unreleased material. Even in the 12 pages of notes that Billy Jasper made in his cell when he'd made these confessions, not only about the Range Rover murders, but the murder of Nick Whiting. If Billy Jasper's not telling the truth, it would make him a very convincing, with a very interesting imagination and a very, very good memory. Because if Billy Jasper's not telling the truth, that means that he would have been told what to say. You know, we'd have been led to believe that Billy Jasper was a heroin addict, a cocaine addict. I mean, obviously, he admits in his story that he was taking cocaine that evening. But as far as being a heroin addict, he was trying to get time off his, or whatever it was that Billy Jasper was actually up to, his actual hidden agenda, his other motive. It's hard to believe that Billy Jasper just came up with this story on his own. There would have to be someone behind it, and there would have to be an alternative agenda or motive for saying what he said. But I truly don't believe that's the case. I believe that Billy Jasper was admitting to what he did that evening. Of course, at this point, the police had had their tip-off about Michael Steele, and that's where their focus was, and had no real interest in what Billy Jasper was coming forward and telling them. Billy Jasper drove them out to the area of where he dropped off Mr. D, because he didn't take him to the entrance and say, this is where I dropped off Mr. D. Straight away there was this disbelief in his story. And now also there's this disbelief that Mr. D travelled across the fields to get to the Range Rover. But if Mr. D was a military man, which we're led to believe, then why would he approach the enemy from the obvious direction? In my imagination, Mr. D was doing what any military person would do, approaching the enemy from an area they wouldn't see coming, and which was not going to be obvious to the police, and which was never really checked. But there always will be a few unanswered questions, or many unanswered questions, when it comes to the Billy Jasper theory. One being, why was there space between the Range Rover where Craig pulled up and the gate? It looks like Craig Rolfe was expecting to drive into the field, whereas if there was just a coke deal, why were they intending in driving into the field, unless where that was the deal, where the deal was going to take place? Or was the Range Rover going to actually drive into the field for another reason? Some believe they were actually down there for this fake plain law, and of course you've got the ones that believe that Michael Steele and Jack Williams did it. There has been no more actual proof that Michael Steele and Jack Williams killed the three in the Range Rover. Jack Williams, of course, under licence and can't speak about what went down or what he knows or doesn't know, and Michael Steele, still cate in his late 70s. If either knew what went down that evening, neither of them are to this day still speaking about that evening. But Jack Williams in Rettendon that evening collecting Darren Nichols' car, according to his alibi. But what was Darren Nichols really doing in Rettendon if the Billy Jasper theory is true? I personally find it very hard to believe that Patrick Tate was the target of these murders based on the motive that we're meant to believe in. I truly believe that Tony Tucker was the intended target, whether the Mr. D and Billy Jasper theory is true or not. But like I said, once the Sky documentary drops, there will be a lot more information backing up the Billy Jasper story. It all starts with the Sky documentary, That's where the door opens to this new information. The new information will be put out there for you to decide whether you think it's true or not. And I'll see you very soon on the next video.